Hey everybody, thanks for joining me here on Highway Flyer once again. On my recent trip, I was fortunate enough to meet up with a friend of mine and a fellow author named Foster Kinn. A lot of you guys know Foster's books and have seen his Facebook posts and Instagram posts, things like that. He is the author of 4 books, 2 Amazon bestsellers, Freedom's Rush and Freedom's Rush 2. His last book, The Poet, the Professor, and the Redneck. And then he's got a new book called The Truth that's coming out soon. It's a collection of short stories. Foster is a long distance biker. He's been everywhere. I think he's been to all 50 states and he's been through most, if not all, of Canada. And just a great guy, down to earth, easy to talk to, funny as hell. But I had a chance on my last trip to sit down and talk with him a little bit. And so I want to play that for you. You can call it an interview if you want. I call it a conversation. But I hope you enjoy it. I am visiting with a friend of mine, fellow writer, fellow author, Foster Kinn, and thought we'd just kind of chat for a bit. And I've got some questions for him, and he hopefully will have some answers for me. So kind of
just don't ask me about the IRS. Or
yeah, well, yeah, we keep those parts secret. So, well, first off, what made you decide to write a book?
Yeah, well, going back when I was a tiny little kid, I had always wanted to write. I always wanted to be a writer, and I never did. I got into music and wrote a lot of music. But I got into an accident in 2011. I was in a wheelchair and crutches for 4 months.
Oh, wow.
So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, I can either watch TV or do something. And so I started writing a book and started writing the things that had happened, and I so dug it. It was just great. So in a way, it was 2 things. It was like I always wanted to write a book. I never planned to write a book about riding a motorcycle, but the event of that accident where I broke 3 bones in my left foot. I still have a stainless steel plate and 6 screws in my upper left ankle. I got road rash and broke a couple of fingers and typical stuff.
You worked in music,
Yeah.
in the film and TV industry and all that. Was it pretty easy to transition to writing a book from writing music? Or
Yeah. Well, here, my first, full-fledged going for over the ramparts artistic thing was music. It was composing. I composed classical music, and but the work I did in Hollywood, I was a music copyist. Creating the individual parts for the musicians.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what a music copyist does. But my own stuff was composing, classical music. So when I got into writing, now it's real different, but it's still an art form. So there were certain art form artistic principles that hold forth over all art forms. So in that sense, it was a little easier because I didn't have to go through a whole big experimental phase and does this work? Does that work? It was a little smarter than. Well, probably wasn't as smart as I thought I was, but anyway. So yeah, and it was, and I did well. I started writing short stories in the late '90s, and worked on it then, sort of part time, not all the way, and then wrote the first book in 2012. That accident may have been in 2012 now that I'm thinking about it, but or 2000, yeah. So. It went pretty easy. It's still work. Come on, man. Writing a book, well, you know that. It's not something you do on a weekend.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and my writing process has always been a little different. I used to get into arguments with my teachers in school and stuff because they want you to do the outline and the rough draft and the first draft and then the next draft and then the next. And I've always been the guy that if I had an idea, I'd just sit down and write it.
Yeah.
And then I go back through and tweak it for, whatever grammar, spelling and things like that. But for the most part, it was just sit down and write.
Yeah.
And, doing the books is, okay, so you write it, then you go back through and you rewrite it. Then you go back through and you go, oh, we need to add that part. Oh, we need to. Oh, that doesn't make much sense. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a lot more work.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot more work, but
Well, it's interesting you say that because that's exactly what I do. And I've tried writing an outline, and following it, and it just, God, it would drive me nuts, and I would just get stuck. I go, no, this isn't working. And then you hear about writers who go, I get up every morning at 5:30, have coffee, and I write until 10. And I do that 6 days a week. And so I tried that, and that didn't work either. And so, I don't know. But you do have to find your own procedure, your own, thing. So that's what I did. And I guess yours is similar to mine. Either that or mine is similar to yours. I mean, what do you think of it? I don't know.
either way, we're similar to each other.
Oh my God. I feel sorry for you.
Well, I know Craig Johnson, the author of the Longmire books.
Oh, yeah.
He is very disciplined in he goes up in his studio and he writes for 8-10 hours a day, and so on and so forth. And I really tried doing things like that, but I'm not a very disciplined person. and I have these squirrel moments where it's like, oh, I'm working along here. Oh, shiny red ball. You've now got 7 books, right?
Well, no, actually, I have 3 books published. The 4th one is coming soon. The other 4 are short stories that I self-published.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
$2.99 or whatever.
Right. So how was it with the first 2 books, the Freedom's Rush books? They were based on your experiences on the road and riding and things like that. How was it to shift into basically fiction?
It wasn't that hard, and it was actually sort of welcoming because well, okay, look. Here's one of the cool things about writing fiction. You just sit down and minute after minute, hour after hour, you just lie your ass off, right? And you get away with it. For some reason, people think it's okay. And, but it was good because I could just create, Now, when you write nonfiction, and you know this too, when you write nonfiction, it really should read as if it was fiction. It should put some excitement in it or whatever.
Yeah.
So, here it was like I just like you. I just started writing. The Poet, the Professor, and the Redneck, and I just decided, well, this is what I want to do. It decided on the characters, and it was great. And it just sort of it gets to a point in a work of art, and this happened when I compose all my longer works and everything. It gets to a point where pretty soon, as you start moving toward completing it, the piece itself, whether it's music or writing, starts to take over. And so you become sort of like a secretary and amanuensis. You just start recording what the story is leading to. And it might not be what you thought of.
Right.
But so it does that. And so it wasn't really difficult, no. It was welcoming, Because I thought at the time, sort of my original thing was to write a 3rd Freedom's Rush book. And I still may do that. I have 3.5 years of writing, which, I have enough.
You have lots of material.
Yeah, definitely enough material, but I just wanted to get away from the nonfiction thing, and not have to be, truthful.
Or reasonably so.
Exactly.
So how did the idea for the Poet, the Professor, and the Redneck come about? Where did that come from, or how did that idea start?
Yeah, it started with the character. The first character I came up with was the professor. He's a retired English professor from Yale. And he's highly intelligent, tall, good-looking, and he's in his 40s, and he just decides, this whole academic thing it's killing me, So he decides just to leave. His marriage fell apart, whatever. So he's living on the road, and he was the first character, and I actually wrote, I think, 6 or 7 chapters on him.
Oh, wow.
And then I thought, okay, but I don't know. I just came up with the redneck guy who was a Southern boy. Now he barely finished 7th grade, and I just thought, well, this is great. You got a guy who's highly educated, PhDs, and this guy who barely finished 7th grade, and that was cool. And then I thought, well, if it was difficult, their conversations were difficult. So I thought, you know what? Just because this kid never went to high school, the redneck guy, doesn't mean he's not smart. And so I decided, no, he's intelligent, but more than that, he's really well read. He's read a lot of books. He has gone through it. And that's the initial connection between the two of them. This guy's an English professor, and then he has this redneck, this guy some sort of generalized Southern accent, and he's read all these books. He's read Victor Hugo and Jane Austen and all of these guys, and so and he is and then it just went into things. It's like, okay, I have this professor guy. Now he's extremely intelligent, he's extremely well educated, but throughout the book, in all of the conversations, not only between those two but other people, he's the one who does the listening. He doesn't put forth any kind of philosophical truth. He listens, And so I thought, well, that's cool. And then and then it just came up. Now, as far as the poet, what I wanted to do, and this is probably probably a spoiler alert, but the thing is, at some point, everybody reads this book, or everybody I've talked to read the book. At some point, you realize, and it's at different spots, you realize that the one telling this story about the professor and the redneck, because they are the two main characters, is not me. It is the poet. The poet is the one who's telling the story. And then you start wondering, well, who is this guy? And is he real? Is he a metaphor? Or maybe he's not real, or maybe these guys are hallucinating. I don't know. And hopefully, at the end of the book, you still don't know if the guy's real or not, because he does things that can't be done by people. I mean, he does impossible things, And then, but on the other hand, he leaves behind physical evidence that he was there. So there's something with this poet guy. So I just started creating that as it went along too, and then I integrated the first 6 or 7 chapters of Redneck, and with the first 6 or 7 chapters with the professor, and I don't know, it works great. And the ending of the book, right on.
And the characters kind of take on a life of their own almost. They kind of flesh themselves out as the story goes along.
Oh yeah. Like Wyatt is the professor. He's in Arches National Park in Moab, and he meets this woman who's in her 30s, and she is pure, unadulterated white trash. So she wants a ride. So he says, "Fine, I'll take you." So they end up camping in Arches National Park. Just creating a little campsite, and they start talking. It turns out she's murdered 16 men. And she's sort of become one of my all-time favorite characters I've ever created. And her name's Cassie, and she's actually really cool. She doesn't just murder people. It's just that she lives on the road and people take advantage of her. I mean, not nice type advantage. And so she has to protect herself, and she's had a horrible childhood and everything. It's just, so it was great. I really enjoyed, doing that.
Yeah, I guess. So what kind of a story is closest to your heart? Is it the fiction stories? Is it the narratives? Is it?
Yeah, right now I'm into fiction. My next book is a gathering, it's a gathering of short stories. There are 13 short stories, 12 of them are total fiction. And they're all centered around bikers and riding motorcycles and such. And
you write what you know.
Yeah, right. The 13th story is called Two Actors, a Building, and a Riot.
Okay.
And it is nonfiction about something that happened in New York City in 1849. And if you don't know about it, your jaw will drop.
So, your short stories, the characters, they're somewhat flawed. Or most of the characters in your short stories have some kind of flaws or some kind of little hidden nuances and things like that.
Yeah.
How do you decide which character gets which flaw, I guess, for lack of a better,
Well, I call it this, and this goes back to my composing days, which I still do, but I call it an organic type development. You just start writing, for Christ's sake. Just start. And pretty soon something will click up and put you, in front of your eyes, and you go, oh, well, that's cool, And so if he is a perfect mechanic, then he's not going to worry about his bike breaking down. But if he's not and he knows a little bit but not a lot, and his bike breaks down, then he's got a problem. And then, you know what I mean? And so these ideas and decisions come from the writing, from the creation itself, and it's not some sort of predetermined, pre-decided upon thing, which we were talking about earlier. You just sit down and start writing.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. And so, that's how it is. And sometimes, it's been a couple of times in these short stories and in the novel, where if it's some characteristic of some character, I go, well, you know what, that would work better for this guy. and his downfall would work better for this, so I'd switch them, and then, you do that because I can.
Well, yeah. So when did you start writing?
Don't make fun of me. Okay, you promise?
I promise.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, God, I'm surprised. Anyway,
I may not keep it, but I promise.
Started writing in September 2008.
Okay.
And so I haven't been writing that long. I've put in a little over 150,000 miles since then. And so riding a motorcycle wasn't anything I had ever. Well, it's something everybody wants to do, the freedom of it and everything. I'd been on a motorcycle 3 times before that. I forget what the third time was, but the first time, it wasn't good. I couldn't figure out how to get it out of first gear. Ended up sideswiping a car on my street when I was a kid. I think it was like 10 or 11. The second time I went down, it was a dirt bike. It was horrible. And not really bad. I didn't break anything. It just got scuffed up. And then, the third time, was when I read about it in the first book, was when my buddy Vic, who had been writing forever, and we both worked out at Sony Pictures. And he had a commuter bike. It was a Yamaha V-Star 650. And he wanted to get rid of it. He wanted to get another commuter bike. And so in January of 2008, he says, you want to buy it? Why don't you get a bike? And I said, nah, it's okay. And then he kept coming back and saying, you really ought to, And he started getting like, yeah, okay, I get it. I get the wind and the freedom and everything. And then finally, I just said, okay. So I went over to his house, and he lived in a neighborhood, houses up and down the street. So the idea was that I'd get on the bike, go out of the driveway, go down to the end of the block, turn around, come back, and tell him, nah, thanks, it was fun, but no.
Yeah.
So the first thing, and you know how guys are, I mean, we're just stupid. So his entire instruction was, okay, that's the front brake, that's the rear brake, there's the throttle, transmission down for first, second, third, fourth, fifth, neutral between first and second. And that was it. That was his entire instruction. So I said, okay, so I get on the bike, and I'm looking at it going, damn, this thing's big. And it did look big, man. So I'm on the street, and I start going out barely, and just went over the gutter, and something caught my eye. And it was probably the sunlight on the window across the street. I thought it was a car. I freaked out. So instead of pulling on the brake, I cranked on the throttle, shot across the street, went over the curb, went over one of those plastic green things that the cable companies put up, sideswiped a hedge, hit a brick wall for a flower bed about that high, went flipping way over, hit my head on the other side. He'd given me his helmet. It was an old helmet, and all of the lining was out of it. So it was and I'm there, and I passed out for about a half a minute. And I remember the last thing I saw him was running across the street thinking he had just killed his best friend. And so, anyway, what happened was I put a dent in the bottom of his tank. Now, he had kept this bike in pristine condition. And I felt like, man, I gotta buy the bike, So I said, okay, I'll buy it. And it was only $2,000. It had 66,000 miles on it. But my idea was to go over there and practice, and I never did. I finally got into the Motorcycle Safety Foundation course, and had a horrible first day. Oh my God. Anyway, I finally learned, and I failed the first test on the Motorcycle Safety Foundation course, because they give you a point for everything you do wrong on the final test, and I think the passing grade, so the more points, the worse. passing grade was 16 or 17 or something like that. I got 29.
Oh.
I was tied for the worst in the class, but I had 6 months to be able to go back and pass it. Finally went back and passed it with like 9 points, and that was it. I mean, I pretty soon had gotten into I had heard this about riding a motorcycle and the freedom and how wonderful it is, and how disconnected you are, how free you are. And I didn't discount it. I didn't say, well, that's not true. And I remember this one point where I went, oh, now I get it. Oh yeah. And God, did that feel good.
Yeah. Once you get that realization, it's oh, now I'm screwed for life.
Right.
So how long did you have that bike before you got another one?
A year.
Okay.
Had it, and then I got the Beast.
Oh, okay.
And that one was, the Beast is a lot bigger, than the V-Star. And then, wow, this is cool.
Really, I love
bigger
it.
bike, and I was just, and then I loved it, I'll tell you a funny story. I didn't know what to call the bike. You know how you have to name your bike, people name your bike. So I was coming up with these names like Babe and, Doll and all that and everything, because I thought it'd be a good line. Somebody says, how you doing? What you been up to, Foster? And I go, oh, it's just riding the Babe all day, every day.
Yeah.
And I was with Vic, the guy who sold me my first bike, and we were going up, I think 101, about mid-California, and we pulled off in the Tascadero. I went to a gas pump, and I had trouble on that ride. I was cutting corners and almost ran into a truck head on, and it was just, I couldn't handle the bike. And I got in there, and those little, the gas pumps are on a little curve about 8 inches high. So I bumped it, and there was this fabulous looking chick on a sport bike, and she looked at me and went, good. Great, yeah. So then I got my gas and went around, parked in front, and the bike fell over on my leg, and it's over. And I was just, God, man, and I couldn't lift it. The thing weighs 700 pounds.
And that never happens without an audience.
No, I know.
Yeah.
So this kid comes out, this big kid, he's drinking a Super Gulps, and he's got a backpack. And I said, hey, can you help me get my bike up? And he says, sure. So he reaches down with one hand, and I'm looking at him going, yeah, that's not going to work. Put your backpack down, put the drink down. This thing weighs 700 pounds. And so we finally get it up. And I'm walking around going, what is it today, man? I can't ride the bike. And I realized what it was, is the bike did not like the names I was giving him.
Oh.
He didn't want to be called Doll. He didn't want to be called Babe. So I'm thinking, oh, it's the name. If I don't fix this name, I'm going to die. I'm going to kill myself. So I went back out, and I remember the first time I saw him when he was parked on the guy's, bought it from his driveway. And I thought, you know what? This bike's a beast. And I said, from now on, you're the Beast. Apologies. There you go. And I haven't had any problems.
So when you do your travels, do you prefer to just take off and go, or do you prefer to have a planned route, or do you kind of do a combination of both?
Yeah, a combination of both. I'll say, like when I went up to New England, I just thought, well, I'll go up to New England. Where in New England? I don't know. And I have no reservations. I have no specific plans. And if I find out about something while I'm out, some other bikers say, hey, you got to check this out. Then I'll go check it out. And so that's what I do. It's sort of, that old saying, young bikers pick a destination and go, old bikers pick a direction and go. So it's sort of picking a direction more than it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I do at least one big trip every year. And like this trip was going to be 5 weeks, 10,000 miles. And I planned it out because the basic plan of the trip was to ride U.S. Highway 83 from the Mexico border to the Canadian border.
Okay.
And then we decided if there was anything worthwhile seeing within 150 miles either direction, we were going to do that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I kind of planned that one out, but I do miss just hopping on the bike and going.
Right.
Because I inherited from my dad, I am a planner and everything, I'm a numbers guy and I'm a planner and everything else. Mm-hmm. And I have a tendency to overdo it, over plan everything.
Yeah.
And it's really a challenge sometimes to just not do that. Just get on the bike and go.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing is if my friends call up and go, hey, let's go for a ride on Saturday. Okay, where do you want to go? Oh, you decide. They always leave it up to me. So I'm like the de facto road captain. So, you know. So are there other bikers in your family? You know, brothers, sisters, kids, whatever?
My son does not. He thinks riding a motorcycle is really not a good idea, and he and I get along really well. I mean, if ever I'm going on the bike, he says, "You sure you want to take the car?" And then my youngest rides on the back. My older daughter, middle child, Lacey, she rides one. She has a bike like the Beast. She has a Juice,
okay.
and she rides really well. She has pretty much of a natural thing for it, which I don't, so that's good. And then my son-in-law, Omar, that guy can ride. His two brothers ride, and his sister, she has a motorcycle license. She doesn't have a bike right now. So yeah, and they're all like really good. And my two grandsons are dirt bikers, and they're it's great watching them. I mean,
yeah, it's so fun to watch the kids doing that. You know,
They're
it's like get them started young. Do you have any trip plans?
Not specifically. Rose and I are thinking we want to go down to Galveston, and then you mentioned Brownsville earlier, so we might head on over there. Want to go up to Taos, or however you say it, New Mexico. Haven't been there. And just other places. I mean, there are some places I would love to take Rose. I mean, she's been all over this country. She's lived in New York. She's lived in California. She's been all over. And her family, went back and forth a lot. But just because you want to share some of the places, like we were talking about the Blue Ridge Parkway and Skyline Drive earlier, or Glacier National Park going to the Sun Road, or Beartooth Highway, and it's like I want to share those places with Rose, and I know that she would, if I may tell you a little thing about Rose, up until she met me, she had only ridden on a motorcycle once.
Oh.
And she was like, I was 16, 17, 8 years old. She went 2 blocks and it went over and that was it. That's all she did. But turns out she is born and bred biker chick. Absolutely loves it. And no problem with having her on the back. She leans, she does everything right. She gets it. She just gets it. You know what I mean? So I'm blessed.
That's worth its weight in gold, too.
Oh, I tell you what, yeah. So, and I say biker chick with all of the highest accolades you can. So
no, that's a good thing.
Yeah,
that's definitely a good thing.
Yeah.
What about more books? You got plans and got ideas going?
Yeah, I've got. This short story book will be coming out in the next month or two or whatever. It's all done. It's all written. It's just all the bric-a-brac you got to do.
Right.
And then the first story in that book is called Devil and Angel. So the next book I want to write, and I may change my mind, it's going to be called, because I like this poet character from the poet, the Professor and the Redneck. And so the next book I want to write is going to be called The Poet, the Devil, and the Angel. And it's going to start out, the first chapter will be pretty much that short story. And just take it off from there. Yeah, I may still write a third Freedom's Rush book, and I really like this poet character. I just want to keep with him.
Yeah.
He's,
that's a real gem too with fiction writing.
Your next book coming out, The Long Road Home?
Mm-hmm. Long Road Home.
Yeah, you had to write. I mean, because it's, Jesus Christ, the stuff that went through there. I'm just going, this poor guy, is he still alive?
Yeah.
I know I talked to him, but so once you get that out and it's, whatever it does for you, you get into the fiction stuff, and you've read a lot of fiction, I know that. So I have a saying, I don't know how relevant this is. I said, if you want facts, read nonfiction. If you want truth, read fiction.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. Thanks.
See, there's a reason you're a writer.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for answering my questions and
Oh, thank you for asking me.
chatting.
Yeah.
This is
You're a
great.
good guy, man. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All
This is
right.
fun.
It is.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. Foster is a really great guy. If you ever get a chance to meet up with him, you won't soon forget him, that's for sure. His books are available all the usual online places, at Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and all the bookstore sites, things like that. Keep an eye out for his new book, The Truth. If you like what you see on this channel, please hit the subscribe button. Should be right up about there where I'm pointing. The notification bell will let you know when new videos are posted. And be sure to check out my website, highwayflyer.com. And as always, hopefully I'll see you on the road. Keep your knees in the breeze.